you. Hi, everybody. I appreciate you hanging in there for the last talk of the day. I know it's tiring, so I'll try to make it interesting. So a few words about myself. I've been in the security space for a long time, over 20 years now. A big part of it in application security. Today I'm with Synopsys, which is a company that acquired Coverity and Seeker, which was my company, and Codnomicon, which is a company that discovered Heartbleed. And if you want to know more, we have a booth and all that stuff. I don't want to spend time on that. So I'm a hacker and pen tester at heart, but over the recent years I've been doing a lot more work at the higher levels, working on building the right processes for security, helping organizations with integrating security into the Agile world, which is why you're going to hear this talk. And Seeker, my product, was acquired, is very focused on helping organizations with Agile. So it's not a product pitch. I'm trying very hard not to make it product pitch, but just for disclosure, the cases I'm talking about are using our product. I'll try to stay away from the commercial side as much as possible. I'm also a photographer, which I usually prefer talking about, but apparently it's not the right material for LastCon. So I just put the closest thing I could do to Agile. It's from my last trip to South Africa. So I'll just go really quickly over that. I think there was like a bunch of talks about Agile and security, and I don't want to spend too much time on the problem. But just to make sure we're all on the same page, the main problems with Agile, right, is that it's fast. It's fast, it's short cycles, and it means that a lot of the things that used to kind of work for us in the non-Agile world, I'm saying kind of because we all know that security and development has not really been working for anybody ever. But even the stuff that was kind of working does not really work when you have cycles that are 3 weeks long or 1 hour long, which we see more and more of. There's too much data. All the tools that find vulnerabilities and help you automate things tend to generate too much data, which makes it very hard to sift through in a very short time. It's very hard to prioritize risk with developers that don't necessarily understand anything about security. And so all this makes all those big problems that we see terrible in Agile. And I remember using to read stuff that says, well, we'll build a side process to the Agile development that's slower so the developers can work, and then after we already deployed our products, we'll find the vulnerabilities and fix them. But that's a pretty dangerous approach, as you know, we're going live with high-level vulnerabilities. So what I'm going to talk in this talk today, I'm not going to talk about best practices. I'm not going to talk about all the problems. I'm going to take 3 customers that we helped build an Agile process and just see what we did with them, what were the challenges, where are the problems. And those are real-world cases. I wouldn't say they're perfect, but they're sort of working. So that's a good start. So you'll see me repeating that throughout all the cases. Everything is around automation, right? With Agile security, with Agile anything really, everything's around automation. We need to build a process and technology that can be automated, continuous, and practical. And the practical bit is very important, and I'll go into that. And so as we go through the cases, we'll come back to this. Automation is the key for everything. So case 1, let's start. So insurance company transforming to Agile. And this is an important thing. So when people talk about Agile, we have all this wonderful concept of Scrum and DevOps and continuous testing and full automation. But the reality is that only a very small chunk of the customers that I meet are actually there. The majority of the customers are moving to Agile, trying to be Agile, trying to do test automation, trying to do this, and they're always somewhere in between. And when we came to this customer, they were before everything. They said, we are starting our Agile transformation. We need, we've never done security in the development until today. And what we want to do is start to build in security into our development as we're moving to Agile. They brought the DevOps manager that was driving this. But you have to bear with us that we'll probably not have Agile and full DevOps in place for the next few years, but we still want to start. That was 2 years ago. We're working with them since closely. They're moving, they're progressing, but in fact, they're still very far from being an Agile shop, right? They have some stuff that's better and some stuff that's worse. And that requires building a process that's very dynamic. So they have stuff that's already fully CI, that builds every night. They have stuff that isn't. They have stuff that has full test automation. For the most part, they don't. They still do most of the QA manually. That's the reality. And so we had to integrate into that. So some of the challenges that we had, obviously, nobody in the development ever knew anything about security. They were a very immature company in the sense of not just Agile, but security and development. So they've never done any development training. And they didn't think they want to do that. They didn't think it would be practical for them. As I said, very different Agile maturity levels, very little test automation. Even today, 2 years later, we're looking at less than 20% of what they need to test that's done with automated testing. If you go to a customer, if you go to an organization that tells you that they have their entire functionality covered by test automation, they're lying. I've never seen anybody, the really good ones get to 70, 80%. There's always some part of legacy code, some part of functionality that ended up, yeah, we have everything covered, and then we start looking, what about this? Oh, this. Yeah, this, we have a guy that tests once a week or whatever. And their security group was very small. It's an insurance company. It's not a giant insurance company. It's a medium-sized insurance company. Their security team was 4 people, mostly dealing with firewalls and policy stuff. They didn't even have anybody to work closely with R&D. And of course, regulatory requirements. And of course, they have all the technology in the world, like every big financial institute. And the first thing, and this is very important, when you want to go and help build Agile security, it's all about the process before the technology. We need the supporting technology, but we need the right process. So we help them build a process, and the first part of this process, and that's always true, is get the R&D on board. So the thing was, in the past, right, we would have developers writing code and security coming and disturbing them at some point. Right? Oh no, now we have to test that, and we'll block you and we'll disturb you. This process doesn't work in 3-week cycles. The only people that can do security in code are the developers. And the only way to make a process like this work is by getting someone from DevOps, from R&D, taking ownership over security. Every time, and trust me, I've seen them, they're not in here because they're bad case studies. Every time we see somebody where the security guy is responsible for the security in the DevOps, it fails. It needs to be someone from their side, right? And so in here we had a very good candidate. The DevOps manager is a very talented lady, and she saw the importance of security, and she took ownership of this. And so she created a very good working relationship with security. Security were there to guide what they want, what they need in terms of risk and management. But the day-to-day is managed by DevOps, and that's very crucial. The other thing to make the security people feel comfortable, because suddenly something that's security is being taken from them, is that security needs to be in the process. They need to feel they have visibility. Historically, security people don't know what developers are doing at all. So in this case, they actually said, okay, we'll give all the security people access to our bug tracking system, because everything goes to the bug tracking system. I'll talk about that in a second. And so they never use it. They never use it. But they know they can. And that gives them assurance that nobody's trying to hide anything from them or cheat them or whatever. The other thing that they wanted, because they're slow Agile, right? They don't release every hour and so on. They wanted approval committees. So there's a committee, 4 people. There's the DevOps guys and the security guys. They get a PDF report, not the bug tracking stuff, that says this is the status of the application from the latest test. Can we go live or not? There's a clear policy around going live or not, but there's still a committee that approves that. Sometimes they would commit they would approve going live, despite having a vulnerability and so on. Again, gives security a very comfortable feeling about the process being run by R&D. There are about 15 systems, so whoever needs to go live is brought up to the committee, not all 15, just the ones that want to go live with the next version. And we did R&D training. If you remember, I said they didn't want R&D training. The reason we did R&D training is it was very basic training. It was basically awareness training. Why awareness training? Just to get the R&D people to understand what the heck is going on here. Why are we getting those new bugs in our systems? Why is all this happening? And it's been very good. It was just 2-hour, 3-hour training, I think, for each developer. Just what is application security, what's SQL injection. A lot of them didn't even know that. And what's this new product that we brought in. Next thing was creating the right risk policy. So that's important. A lot of these tools, all the tools we do, right, have a basic standard of risk. You know, SQL injection is high or critical or whatever this is low. It's not always the same for each organization. For instance, when we came to this organization, we have, if you have sensitive data stored in browser cache, right, they don't have the don't cache flag. For us, it's usually low or medium. For this, it's a regulatory thing. It had to be high. So we helped them build a new policy. They're not using an OWASP top 10 policy, but rather their own policy to determine what's low, what's high, what's important. And as I said before, multiple output channels. So it goes into the bug tracking system, but it also goes into a PDF report that security can consume. It goes to various places where every person feels comfortable. So in terms of their CI DevOps environments, they had Jenkins, which is what most people have for their build server. It pulls code from their repositories, builds the build, deploys it to the test environment. This was a fairly easy environment in the sense the test environment was static, so actual servers that are used every day, the same servers for the testing. Go to my next cases, we'll see they're all dynamic servers, which makes life a lot harder. They use HPQC for bug tracking. They used to have some, or they still have some static analysis open source for quality, not security. But unlike what they did with us, it runs after every build, but the results are not used as a blocking decision for the build. And the reason is because open source static analysis would create a lot of noise, and if it would block, it would just be too slow. So that goes into a separate channel where they sift through that and open tickets from that based on what they see is real. As I said, very, very, very basic test automation, and there was manual QA. So they're not doing very short intervals. They're about, even the projects that are already agile are about 1-month cycles, and then they have manual QA for that. And that was a challenge for us as an automatic tool. And then what we did with that. So obviously we integrated to work from CI. So every time a build is finished, after all the automation that is in place, a launch of security test is done. Security test. And the way our product works, it likes to learn from existing testing because it sees real use cases. So what we did to enable that, because they have very limited automation, is that we actually allowed to record the manual QA and put it into automation. So we could replay manual testing in an automated way and then do the full testing. And of course, whatever they automated, we would record daily. So make sure that everything is covered, run the test after each build, and then they built a policy into their Jenkins. They would see the results. If there was anything that's higher than high, right, high or critical, that would break the build. Because in the policy, high or higher means you can't go into production later. Everything medium for them was fine. They said, we don't want to block the Agile process for medium level vulnerabilities. If we get stuff that's medium, you still need to fix it, but it can be done in the next cycle. Again, we have other customers that break on medium. So the Jenkins breaks on high. The script is built so that whenever there's high, you get this red little icon I'll show you in a second. Then all the findings are pushed to the bug tracking system with their applicable severity. If it's higher, it's opened as blocker because it breaks the build. And a PDF report is generated and sent to security so they can audit the test. So this is how it looks. I had to put gray boxes and stuff that would give the customer a name. But essentially, you can see those are different systems run in different times. Those are all the project, right? This one's broken because it has a lot of vulnerabilities that cause it to break. The rest are green. And so you get this dashboard. You can see at any given time what's the problem. Whenever a build breaks, all the bugs, including the high-level bugs, are being pushed to the ticketing system. Next day, the developer comes, fixes those because they're blockers, so they're highest priority. And they consume the security bugs together with the normal bugs. Whatever a QA guy finds or the automation finds, it all funnels to the same place. They come in the morning, they fix, and then the next day, hopefully, it's good. See, this build tends to break a lot because somebody here is doing a lot of vulnerabilities. Questions? OK, we can keep questions to the end. So that was the first case, probably the least mature customer we had in terms of Agile. This one, UK retailer, is actually one of the more mature customers I've seen. This one was the most textbook Agile customer we ever had. UK retailer, in case you don't know, retailers are the best adopters of Agile in the world. Whenever you talk to retailers, they tell you if we're not Agile, Amazon kills us. Amazon's moving very fast. They're very Agile. And so all the rest of the retailers are driven by this. So this was a pretty simple case. It's a single platform. It has flavors. It's a retailer that has different brands, so it has flavors, but it's essentially the same application. And it's a run-of-the-mill Agile shop. Scrum methodology, 3-week-long sprints, very strict enforcement, which I was very impressed when I got there. What do I mean by strict enforcement of sprints? If a feature is not done, if it has bugs, if it has problems, it's out. 3 weeks over, it's out. It has to wait another 3 weeks to be in. Very, very strict. What? There's a new version every 3 weeks. A day before the 3 weeks, everything has to freeze with good quality. If it's not good quality, it's out. You don't push 2 days to fix this. Oh, yeah. Now, 3 weeks, again, no, it's not common. That's the methodology. I have to say most of the customers I see tend to say, OK, just one more day, we can fix. They're like super rigid. The builds are out on Mondays. If they couldn't fix it over the weekend, it's out. And good. And we took that and used that for security as well. So very strong automation. They had, again, not everything, but they had really good coverage in terms of automation, which was fun to work with. They had very, very, very low maturity in terms of security. Quite surprising for a retailer of their size. They're European-based. I would say generally security got a little later to Europe. It's a few years ago already. They were hacked, and we came over. And apparently, they were doing once a year a pen test with a not so great company. And so as we put our product there, we found like a bunch of problems and all kinds of things you wouldn't expect to find at a retailer at this size. And had very limited security resources, knowledge. Their whole security department was 2 or 3 people. And that included physical security for some of their... No, I'm not kidding. They had like a big warehouse. They didn't have a lot of physical stores, but they had a bunch of warehouses. So there's 3 people. The head of security came from the police, was very physical focused. Then a couple of information security specialists. They had absolutely no clue how to tackle all of this. They would just bring pen testers once in a while and fix whatever they didn't find in their reports. Seriously, we found like easy cross-site scripting, which you'd expect a pen tester to find. So that was a very, very interesting case. So again, the good thing about this and why it's again on this board is because the process was driven by the R&D. It wasn't even driven by security. Security initiated that we had an incident, but then a guy from the R&D took ownership of this. He's like, we have to do this inside R&D. And security were just, yeah, we want to supervise. They didn't even know what they want to supervise, so we just created for them the right framework. So we created a security workflow. They were a little bit different. They wanted to say, we're not going to test for security every build or every night, because their platform's pretty big, and in terms of time and performance, that was an issue for them. Said, we'll test for security weekly, once a week. And essentially, in week 1 and week 2, they find vulnerabilities and ideally find that they're fixed. In week 3, only fixes, everything has to be fixed. Generally, that's how they worked. The first 2 weeks were new features. Last week was just bug fixing out of the sprint. And in week 3, everything that was breaking build was supposed to be fixed. And as I said, very strict. They applied the same principle of security on their system. So if something wasn't fixed for the last test on Sunday before the build has to go on Monday, this feature is out because of a security vulnerability. It will now have to wait until the next sprint. And they're enforcing it pretty strictly, and I'm pretty impressed with that. Again, weekly reports in PDF for the security. The security people in this place didn't want access to the bug tracking system. That was too much for them. They don't want to deal with that, so they just get a report. I'll show you the report in a minute. Again, they had Jenkins for CI. They had Jira for bug tracking, which is extremely popular today. The nice thing about them, or nice yet challenging for us initially, it was the first customer that we saw in the real world doing it. They have all their testing environment in the cloud in Amazon, which makes a lot of sense, but it's all orchestrated dynamically every day. They don't actually have a test server in Amazon that they use. They create a new server every day. Everything was scripted. So there's a script that creates a server, a script that initializes it, a script that uploads their latest build, uploads their database, uploads mock data to the database, and so on and so on and so on. For us, it was a challenge. Back then, our product required some installation and so on. And we got into that, so we, I'll get the next slide. And then everything automatically deployed, tested with Selenium, and of course, daily testing. So what we did was, first of all, based on their request, we helped them, well, they did that really. They created a separate environment for the security testing. Because they orchestrate everything automatically, they didn't want us to run on their normal orchestrated environment because that was already fully booked, right? It's created every night. It's working all night long until the morning. They couldn't put security in there. There was no time. So they orchestrated a new set of servers that would be security testing servers. So once a week, another script runs, creates another instance of all these servers, one more to include our product, and it runs all the security tests. Now we integrate with Selenium. So the integration part with Selenium is running on their existing server, so we can record all the traffic that the Selenium is generating, so we can replay that later for security testing. And we take that into the new environment. And we run the test. Again, the results are returned to Jira, where the policy that breaks builds. Pretty much everybody goes the same path. We create this little HTML that they can view with Jira, just a summary of findings, and PDF report that the security can look at. So that looks something like that. That's the HTML results coming out of the product, so they can integrate to Jira. And then this is the daily reports. So the security people, whenever they want, they can go to this page and they can see, oh, a test was run, a test was run. If they want, they can click it. It gives them a link to the PDF. I don't think they use it much, but it's there. It makes everybody feel comfortable that it's in process, and the security happens. They still bring a pen testing company. I think they upgraded to a better one in our recommendation once a year, but they're in a much, much, much better position right now for that. I'm good with time. Good. So case 3, Ecommerce Giant, one of the largest e-commerce players in the market. So this had a lot of other challenges in it. So this was our most mature customer in pretty much every aspect. They are mature in security. They do a lot of pen tests. They own products. They own static analysis. They own dynamic analysis. They do production testing. And they're also very deep in their agile transformation. So they've been doing this for years. They moved all their systems to a new infrastructure built in an agile manner. Very advanced DevOps. In fact, they developed their own DevOps environment, their own private cloud, their own Elastic, amazing, all internally. They don't want to, so they're a big retailer. As you can imagine, they don't want to depend on Amazon for their cloud services. So they developed a lot of stuff in-house, which was very impressive and very challenging. And they really knew what they wanted to do. But at the same time, they have hundreds of people building this, so developers, DevOps, QA. And even though they do some security training is very hard. It's very, very hard for keeping up. People change jobs every 18 months, and you get new hires, and they forget, and they don't care the reality. So again, the idea was, and this is where we came. They had static analysis, which was used in development, but static analysis, as we know, it produces a lot of data that has to be worked with, and that's hard for some developers, so it requires a specialized team. And they had stuff running in production that would test things as they're deployed already in white hat, right? They had white hat in production. And for them, the fact that stuff, through all their process, the fact that sometimes white hat still found vulnerabilities in stuff going to production, that was a trigger. Said, well, if we have static analysis, we have a process, and yet sometimes stuff goes to production with vulnerabilities, that's unacceptable. We can't afford that. We're a big retailer. We can't afford any vulnerabilities in our production. And so when we came and all this process started, it's actually a newer customer, so it's still in process. But for them, the criteria of success at the end would be, we never, ever again find anything in production. Which is a strong criteria, but it's a good place to aim to. Again, they completely understand that security cannot be involved in the process. And so they had to introduce security automation to the QA and DevOps, which never dealt with that to date. It's a very big organization. So they have their online site, but it's really made out of tons of small sites and applications and components and front end and back end, and each of that is a different team. And it's a big challenge, right? You write an automated tool, you want to open tickets. Where do these tickets go to? You don't want a person now sorting through and saying, oh, this is this component, goes to this team. So that was a challenge, getting all that done, again, automatically. Everything that's not automated breaks and fails. Every time we try to build a shortcut with a customer on something we didn't know how to automate, you say, well, there would be a guy looking at it once a day. No. If it's not fully automated, it will die. It's how Agile works. Because even if the customer has a 4 weeks long sprint, which is fairly long, it will die, and they will want to shorten it. People that start seeing the benefits of Agile, they shorten and shorten and shorten the cycles. And suddenly they do 1 week long sprints because it's great. They also had a very challenging dynamic testing environment. If in my last example, they had 4 servers that were orchestrated automatically every day, here they also had orchestration, but it could be 5 or 10 or 20 that would create elastic servers based on, today we're really testing hard the search component, so that will take a lot of resources. So let's load 10 search servers and put a load balancer in front of them, and all that's created dynamically, and you have to integrate into that. As I said, homegrown DevOps, so all the integrations we had required adaptation. But it's really cool customer, though. So in terms of process, again, in this case, whoever started the process was the security. Again, they saw something in production that was unacceptable for them, said we need another layer at the DevOps level. But they got the DevOps on board. It took a while to get them on board. They were not very happy in the beginning. This was challenging in this organization, but eventually we were there. We did a lot of trainings, but the training was on the process, not on security. Right? We didn't teach the DevOps what's SQL injection, what's cross-site scripting, and how to fix them. We teach the DevOps how to test every day, what to do when you have a high or medium or things like that. It's all about process. For them, they wanted security testing every day as part of their testing. So again, very elastic. So they just slightly increased their environments to support more testing. And so every night, the full functionality testing runs, then the full security testing runs, and so on. Prioritization policy, for them, everything medium or higher is a blocker. Remember, that was the criteria. And so they break a lot of builds for security, which is good. And as I said, the verification process, if it passes this process, it goes on production, and it's found by their production scanning, which is now white hat, we failed. And again, security group supervises. They have access to reports. This is pretty common. So as I said, they use Jira. Jira is the only standard thing they use, which is bug tracking. All their CI, DevOps, cloud internally built. We integrated that. They create builds every day. They create a private cloud environment. As I said, it's elastic, and they orchestrate everything. And they had what we called hybrid automation. So they use Selenium for all the front-end stuff, and it's not even hybrid, it's a multiple grid, and hundreds of different types of internally built scripts and tools for testing all the APIs, all the backends, and so on. And so as we came in, we had to adapt, again, our automatic installation scripts that we had for the previous retailer to support all their complex orchestration, and did the fullest CI integration. Again, everything, it's very similar. Everything that we did before, getting all the automation integrated. So whenever they have Selenium scripts running, they're running through our product so we can learn how normal usage of the application is done. It makes the security testing better than just going over the pages by parameter. And one of the things, and as I mentioned, so we built this whole infrastructure based on their request that we could decide based on where in the code we found the vulnerability, based on basically servers, types of servers and classes, where does it go to in terms of opening the bugs. So there was a one-time project, which was a little nasty, of mapping all these things. But now, whenever a new vulnerability is introduced, it's automatically assigned to the right team. And this is very crucial, because otherwise it gets lost. There are, I know, 12, 14 different teams on the systems that we're providing, some front-end, some back-end. It has to open the ticket for the right team, otherwise the ticket's lost. It's gone. And it's not possible to test each team separately, right? Because the way our product works, it tests the entire application. So it will always find things that maybe belong to another team. So, oh, I even finished on the original time. So, questions? Wait, where's the, you have the speaker, right?
Can you give us some example of what kind of automation did you do? You mentioned several times, if you don't do automation, it's going to break. So what kind of automation did you do for them?
So test automation. So everything is tested automatically, and then the findings are pushed automatically to the bug tracking system. The decision on whether build is good or bad is automatic.
Did they do static analysis testing?
So
any of the groups that you?
Some of them did. I mentioned that. The thing with static analysis, as I mentioned, and it's a problem that still needs to be solved. Static analysis tends to produce a lot of results, a lot of data. and the triaging of that is complicated. One of the reasons that these customers picked our product was because our product does the triaging automatically, and so it produces results that are much more consumable without requiring human intervention.
Are you saying that static analysis is not going to work well with the Agile? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it will require, first of all, it depends on products. There are different products. Some of them are harder to make work with Agile than others. It requires building the right policy and the right rules to get rid of a lot of the data. The point is, okay, static analysis is focused on finding not just vulnerabilities, but also bad coding practices and things that are poorly written. And as a security expert, I'm all for fixing everything. But in reality, the cost of fixing everything, or the time that it takes to fix everything, may be too big for a very fast process. So that means that the same, if you want to use static analysis in Agile, you have to just look at the most important things, the verified, the high-level things, and fix them as part of the process, and the rest you push into the backlog that can be fixed in future versions.
And how about the dynamic testing? You said that security team should not be involved. So are you teaching that group to do the dynamic testing, or it does not happen?
I think the product that you use is doing the dynamic testing. I used to teach QA people to do security tests. It was a fun concept. It did not last very long. I don't think we can expect QA people to do security testing. I think, and honestly, if you look at Agile, you don't even want QA people to do functionality testing anymore. You want scripts to do that. You want automation, automated tools. Sorry?
Somebody has to.
Yeah. So QA today, as we move to
QE,
yeah, they do less of actual testing and more of writing scripts that test. And security people do write the scripts that test for security, but again, they can use products. I don't want to pitch my product on this stage because it's OWASP and that's wrong. But I think there are a lot of products in this space that are focused on finding vulnerabilities in an automated manner, and that's kind of needed for this.
For the Agile world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
More questions?
Yes, thank you for giving 3 examples that involve in early stage and mature and ideally case, right? So I wonder, in these 3 different cases, do you have a different strategy when you start to engage with the team, like for the early stage Agile team, whether you will go in immediately like the project start, or you will wait for like 1 or 2 sprint and then start to go in as a security expert?
I would say that realistically, it would usually take more than 1 to 2 sprints anyway. These things take time. Everybody wants to start right away, but it takes time. It takes time to get the people on board. It takes time to show them that it gives them value. I would say that with organizations where the Agile maturity is low, a lot of times we start with a much more manual process, in the sense that somebody is actually clicking through the UI to start the process and do the test and review the results, and then click another button to push them to a bug tracking system, because they're not mature in the whole concept of fully automated testing, bug reporting, and so on. Whereas when you go to the more advanced customers, they don't even want to see the manual stuff. They even before we start, right, we come to the POC and they say the POC criteria is that you get it in automated. They don't even, for them, the process is more important than actually seeing how the product finds vulnerabilities, how accurate it is, because they understand that without it being fully automated, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad.
Cool. Thank you.
More questions? No?
How long typically for, in your case studies, to kind of get a program started from start to end in terms of not just the software installs, but the culture change and where it's returning value to the business after you've set it up?
I would say it's usually between 4 or 5 months to a year. It takes time. And I would say that we've had customers that it takes them longer than a year. So we don't have a lot of small companies as customers, so it's hard for me to talk about it. I would say it's faster with highly technical organizations. You know, if you go to a tech company, they are already more agile, and they're generally more agile as an organization. So it takes shorter than when you go to an insurance company, which is not so agile. But then, you know, for the retailer I'm talking about, one side, the last case, they're very big, but at the same time, their tech group is very strong because they're so big. And so even though they're a big organization, in many ways they were easier than an insurance company that's much smaller. So it's a mix of size and technological advancement. Good. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed.